Lauren, good to see you on Zoom.
You too.
I'm curious, does your life look dramatically different coming out of the pandemic than it did before?
It's funny, it's kind of hard for me to overstate how different my life looks coming out of the pandemic than it did going in it.
How so? I'm totally curious.
Well, going into the pandemic, I had a seasonal job in Yosemite and lived in a tent. And coming out of it, I've somehow gone to grad school. I've gotten married. My whole life, everything I feel like about my life has changed. I have a dog.
I mean, for so many people, it had this way of clarifying what was important. It was like the world slowed down, the trappings of life sort of pulled back. I kind of almost think of it like a tide going out and revealing all these different things, like on this sandy strip of beach. And it was like all these interesting things were sort of revealed about our lives. And with it, there were a bunch of questions. And as that life, as regular life has crept back in and kind of recovered some of those things that were exposed, I think a lot of us were left with the question of what do I want to take with me? And I watched friends make big life leaps. I saw people move away, they switched careers, they left jobs to start businesses, they rethought or left relationships. People were examining their lives and acting on what they discovered. And it was something that, that happens all the time, but very rarely have I seen it happen all at once to so many people.
Yeah, do you feel like that happened to you?
For me, it was centered around work. It's been 16 years since I founded the Diaries, and 16 years since the Diaries found me. And that is more than a third of my life, which is kind of crazy. And, when we started, there were maybe 1,000 podcasts, a few hundred podcasts, I think, when we started the show. There are 3 million today. There was at some point in the last year, we're on a business call with a major podcasting platform, that you're probably using to listen to this podcast on right now. And they were they told us the future is videos. And I'm like, oh man, really? I don't know, people, it's what? And then there's these other points where I watched some of the magazines that I used to write for 20 years ago. They were consumed by conglomerates and then they just disappeared. And I've had other people be like, have you thought about NFTs? And I'm just like, come on, this is really this is a cool thing. And it just felt for a level, it just seemed like the future maybe was pretty murky and, maybe even slightly dystopian. And it was weird because on a level, so much about the Dirtbag Diaries has been going so well on a day-to-day. And there was just this conflict in my head of being I'd think about while I was running out on the trails or grinding up hills on my mountain bike. I would just think about it as is this what you're going to do? And I guess there was doubt in my mind. And I'm really comfortable with the feeling of insecurity. I've learned how to settle into that, but I am not used to doubting my own commitment. That's not something I've had before. And it wasn't easy for me. Last fall, my son Tep, he was going through this wave of not sleeping well. And I was like, dude, we love you, but you got to learn how to, you can't get up and just wake up and come into everyone's room and be like, hey, everyone, I'm awake. You're you got to learn how to read in bed or something. And so one morning I got up early to do something and I have this super weird sensation. I'm hearing my own voice. And I sneak over to their door and I crack it open a notch, and both boys are wide awake at 5:30 in the morning, lying in bed, and they're listening to the Diaries on an iPad. And they don't hear me, and I watch them for a minute, and I can see their eyes are just open, and their minds are traversing the story of someone else's life. And it turns out that they had been power listening in the early morning hours like going deeper and deeper into the show for like weeks. And for a moment, like they looked up and they're like, oh crap, we're in trouble. We're up too early. And I'm like, no, it's all good. And it was this powerful moment for me of seeing two young kids, and I know they're mine, but they're just lying quietly, listening and thinking. And that was really powerful to me.
Yeah, it's so cool because I feel like, we just put things out into the world all the time, nonstop. Mm-hmm. And very rarely do we get to like see the impact of that. And it's pretty cool that you got to see that with your own kids.
Yeah, it's like seeing the creative out in the wild. And it was like all of a sudden, all those questions that had been like rolling around, all that doubt, it snapped out and it was just crystal clear. Like I love telling stories that make people think, laugh, and feel something. Sign me up for that. Like being part of a community that's there for one another, I am here for it. And for me, watching a group of talented, hyper creative teammates try to do their best work, it leaves me filled up every day. And I just want to keep going. I'm cool with that. I'm cool for the next 16 years. Like I want to keep getting better because that's what you want when you love something. One of my longest creative collaborators and like close friends, he was like kind of flipping me grief one time, and we were talking about the work, and he said the Diaries has a way of finding people when they need it the most. It's this like nudge to be the person you want to be, and the stories kind of help people make that leap. And then he because he like loves flipping me shit, he says your goal should be to have no listeners. Like it'll mean that you have finally figured out how to do your job after all these years. And, through the years, this show has reached hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you found the Diaries in a college dorm when you were trying to think about what steps to take, or like me, in your mid-20s in a van down by the river somewhere trying to, plot out how to make your world even bigger.
Yeah. And some of you found it in the middle years of your lives when it's like hard to find a moment for yourself. A few of you found it later in life when you were plotting exit strategies from jobs and teenagers. And at the base level, I hope it ushered in some unforgettable experiences and provided some inspiration. Maybe it helped you pull the trigger on a trip that changed your life, or an adventure that left you simultaneously filled and humbled.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it might have led to some type 2 fun.
Yeah, and maybe even some type 3, which we apologize for. It certainly has done that for me. Today, the show is surrounded by an incredible array of creatives more than ever before.
Yeah, and we want to create, and we want to do rad work, and we want to inspire each other in our community and make each other laugh. We want to do more.
Yeah, and when someone comes to Becca and I with a good idea for a story or a totally new series or something like that, we want to be able to say yes. And a lot of you out there have also been asking for more. You've been asking for more stories, and we just haven't quite been able to make that work.
Today, there's around 110,000 of you listening, which is totally crazy. And, a small number of you have been supporting the show via PayPal. And we've always used that money to make the show better. But until recently, we haven't really had a good way of giving you something more in return. But now that's changed.
Today, after many, many months of work, we present the Dirtbag Diaries Plus. Exclusive stories, community collaborations, interviews from the adventure world. It's our way of creating more Type 2 fun for this community. And it's also your way of becoming a member.
Fitz, what does it mean to be a member?
So on a nuts and bolts level, you get to receive additional stories, interviews, and campfire chats alongside your regular programming ad-free. Diaries Plus episodes will automatically show up in your feed, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other apps. It is bigger than that, though. Membership means that you are part of making sure that this show is here for the next person who needs it.
Yeah, and that's what it means to be a community, right? When the show hits your earbuds or your car speakers, just imagine that person finding this show for the first time. going through the back catalog, as so many as you have, and I totally do all the time, and you'll know that you helped make that happen.
What if we all invested more time and money into the things that brought us joy? The outdoors, community, creativity. That's the kind of stuff that gives us meaning. That's the kind of stuff that gets you out of bed in the morning. And joy, sometimes it does not come from easy things. I don't think this is easy what we're about to go do together. But joy comes from challenge, right? Or at least it does for me. So our ask is $5 a month or $50 a year. We figured out an approachable price that allows us to invest in the creative and talented people who make this show. And here's the gig. If 1 out of 10 listeners signs up, we can power this show for another 16 years. We can do this. And so I'm asking, if you are that person, that 1 in 10 person who steps up and says, yeah, I'm interested, I would like more cool things in my life. And if you are that person, I think essentially that means you're the person that when a good friend texts and asks you to go on an adventure, your answer is like, hell yes.
So here's how you do it. You click the link in the show notes to subscribe, or you visit dirtbagdiaries.com/plus.
And here's a promise. First and foremost, we're going to make the diaries stronger. We are going to increase the number of shows we do by 50% a year. These additional episodes are available to Diaries Plus members only. You'll get all episodes ad-free. If you are one of the incredible listeners who's already been supporting us via PayPal, thank you. We will be reaching out to each of you to get you set up with your account. If you're not one of those people and you're interested in joining, for the price of a beer or a fancy coffee, you can help us grow. You can help our community grow. More Type 2 fun, more friendships, more stories to tell, more connections, more giving back, more community. If membership isn't your thing, we get it. And thanks to our incredible sponsors, our regular feed will remain free. But right now I'm texting you. I want to go on an adventure with you. I don't know how it's totally going to work out because it's life and that's fine, but I think there's going to be some fun. Become a Diaries Plus member today.
You can do that on our website or by clicking the Become a Member link in the show notes. Where we go from here depends on you.
Dirtbag Diaries Plus. More Type 2 fun.